Rebecca Harper was once seen as a grieving mother begging for her daughter's safe return, but when 10-year-old Lily Harper's body was found in a shallow grave, shocking evidence revealed that the danger had been inside her own home all along. On a warm spring afternoon in Maplewood, the disappearance of 10-year-old Lily Harper began as an ordinary worry that quickly spiraled into every parent's worst nightmare. The day started like any other, with children playing in the park, neighbors tending to their gardens, and the small town carrying on with its usual rhythm. By late evening, everything changed. Rebecca Harper, Lily's mother, called the police to report that her daughter had gone missing after a short walk to the neighborhood park. Within minutes, patrol cars lined the quiet street, their flashing lights piercing the calm of the suburban neighborhood. Word spread quickly, and soon neighbors filled the sidewalks, whispering in shock. The Harpers' home, once just another modest house on the block, became the center of anxious attention. Search teams were organized before midnight, and volunteers with flashlights and dogs scoured the nearby woods and riverside paths. Flyers bearing Lily's smiling face were pinned on every lamppost, store window, and community bulletin board. Local news reporters appeared the next morning, broadcasting the story across the state. For many residents, the case felt personal. Maplewood was a town where children walked freely, and parents rarely worried about danger lurking nearby. Now, fear began to seep into daily life, replacing the sense of safety that had defined the community for decades. As the days passed without answers, tension grew. Rumors spread quickly, with some insisting that strangers had been spotted lingering near the park, while others believed something darker was at play. Candlelight vigils were held on the town square, drawing hundreds of people who prayed for Lily's safe return. Rebecca Harper stood before cameras, her face streaked with tears as she pleaded for anyone with information to come forward. Her trembling hands clutched a photo of Lily, and her voice cracked with desperation. To many watching, she seemed the very image of a devastated mother. But beneath the surface, detectives were already noticing cracks in her story. Despite the massive search effort, weeks dragged on with no sign of Lily. Police canvassed every inch of the park, interviewed dozens of residents, and followed up on countless tips, but each lead led to disappointment. The absence of evidence made the case even more unsettling. There were no signs of a struggle, no footprints pointing to abduction, no witnesses who saw her leave the park. The unanswered questions weighed heavily on Maplewood, casting a shadow over the town. It was as if Lily had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only fear, grief, and the lingering suspicion that the truth was far closer than anyone dared to admit. Detectives in Maplewood pored over every piece of information they could gather, determined to find answers in Lily Harper's disappearance. They started by carefully retracing her last known steps. The security camera outside a small corner store captured a grainy image of Lily walking past with her backpack, her ponytail swinging behind her. That single frame was both heartbreaking and vital. It proved she had made it out of her neighborhood. But after that, the trail went cold. Officers checked every nearby camera, questioned clerks, and even analyzed bus routes in case she had been taken further from town. Still, the investigation kept circling back without progress, each lead dissolving into another dead end. Attention soon shifted closer to home. While the community rallied around Rebecca Harper, investigators grew uneasy about her behavior. In the early days, her interviews were tearful and frantic, but over time she became guarded, offering conflicting details about Lily's routine. At first, she said Lily had gone to the park alone, but later she mentioned that she had walked part of the way with her. In one conversation, she claimed Lily had been wearing her favorite red jacket, but in another, she insisted it was blue. Detectives trained to spot inconsistencies began taking note. Small contradictions might be excused by stress, but when stacked together, they raised troubling questions. Neighbors painted a picture of Rebecca that was far from simple. Some described her as devoted, always walking Lily to school and baking cookies for the neighborhood children. Others recalled moments of frustration when her voice carried through the walls during heated arguments. Several neighbors quietly admitted they had noticed Rebecca withdrawing over the past year, rarely leaving the house except for errands. Police learned that financial troubles had weighed heavily on her. Bills piled up, debt collectors called frequently, and foreclosure notices were said to have arrived at the Harper home. These personal struggles gave detectives reason to dig deeper into her life, but they still lacked any evidence directly tying Rebecca to Lily's disappearance. For nearly 2 months, the case stalled. Flyers faded in the sun, and search parties dwindled as hope slipped away. The media moved on to newer stories, but in Maplewood, the unease never faded. The police continued to watch Rebecca carefully, convinced that something in her story did not add up. They waited, gathering what little they could, holding on to the belief that eventually a break would come, and when it did, it would reveal far more than the town was prepared to face. The long-awaited break in the case came when a hiker ventured into the dense woods that bordered Maplewood. It was a place few locals visited, overgrown with brambles and quiet enough that even the sound of footsteps felt unsettling. About a mile into the trail, the hiker noticed something unusual, a patch of freshly disturbed soil, half hidden beneath fallen leaves. The ground appeared uneven, and curiosity turned into horror when the hiker spotted the faint outline of a small blanket peeking through the dirt. Authorities rushed to the scene, and within hours, the forest became a crime scene, swarming with investigators. The shallow grave was carefully unearthed, and inside lay the remains of a child, wrapped clumsily in a thin, worn blanket. Dental records later confirmed the community's worst fear: it was Lily Harper. The discovery shattered any remaining hope in Maplewood. Residents who had clung to the belief that Lily might still be alive now found themselves grieving together in stunned silence. The town square, once filled with vigils and prayers, turned into a place of mourning, with flowers and candles laid beneath her photographs. But for investigators, the grave site was more than just a scene of sorrow. It was a crucial piece of evidence. The shallow burial suggested haste, as though the person responsible had panicked and wanted the body hidden quickly. The area was not far from the Harper home, raising unsettling questions about whether someone familiar with the town had chosen the spot deliberately. Detectives combed through the site carefully. They found strands of hair tangled in the blanket, small fragments of fabric buried nearby, and impressions in the dirt, suggesting that someone had returned to the grave at least once after the initial burial. The unsettling detail implied an ongoing connection, as if the perpetrator had been compelled to revisit the scene. Each piece of evidence was bagged and analyzed, but even before results came back, the case began to shift from a mystery about a missing child to a chilling investigation into who had wanted her hidden. The news of the grave's discovery reignited media attention. National outlets returned to Maplewood, broadcasting the heartbreaking update across the country. Families hugged their children tighter, and whispers filled the town: if Lily hadn't been taken by a stranger, then who had done this? The shallow grave was not just a tragic end to a search. It was the opening of a darker truth, one that pointed far closer to home than anyone had imagined. Forensic experts moved quickly, determined to uncover every trace of evidence that the shallow grave had left behind. Soil samples were collected, analyzed, and matched to locations around Maplewood, eventually narrowing down to a chilling discovery. The dirt embedded in the grooves of Rebecca Harper's car tires was an exact match to the soil from the burial site. This link suggested her vehicle had been at the woods recently, despite her insistence that she had never driven near the area. Detectives searched the Harper home with renewed urgency, and what they uncovered began to paint a grim picture of the events that led to Lily's death. Inside the basement, officers discovered a large storage bin pushed behind old boxes. When pried open, it revealed Lily's backpack, the same one she had been seen wearing in the corner store surveillance footage. The bag still contained her school notebooks, a few colored pencils, and a small stuffed rabbit she carried everywhere. Its presence inside the home was a contradiction Rebecca could not explain, since she had told police Lily had taken it to the park the day she vanished. Alongside the backpack, fibers from the blanket used to wrap Lily's body were identified as identical to another blanket folded neatly in Rebecca's bedroom closet. These findings provided a direct connection between the crime scene and the Harper household. Investigators dug deeper into Rebecca's life and uncovered a pattern of stress and instability. Records showed a recent eviction notice, credit card debts piling high, and several calls to Child Protective Services in the past 2 years. Neighbors recalled hearing shouting late at night, though none had thought it serious enough to report. Combined with the physical evidence, the profile of Rebecca shifted from that of a grieving mother to the prime suspect in her daughter's murder. The timeline investigators constructed revealed a chilling possibility. Rebecca had reported Lily missing just hours after neighbors last saw the girl alive, suggesting she may have fabricated the park story to cover her tracks. The hurried burial, the concealed backpack, and the consistent lies painted a picture of a mother desperate to hide what she had done. As police pieced it all together, their suspicions hardened into certainty. The once sympathetic figure who had stood before cameras, begging for help, was now at the center of a case that left the entire town reeling. Rebecca Harper's arrest stunned the nation. Just weeks earlier, she had stood before flashing cameras, her hands trembling as she begged for her daughter's safe return. Now, the same woman was escorted out of her home in handcuffs, her face pale and unreadable. The image dominated television screens and online headlines, leaving viewers grappling with disbelief. How could the grieving mother everyone had sympathized with now stand accused of murdering her own child? The case quickly became one of the most talked about tragedies in the country. And Maplewood, once a quiet town, found itself the focus of relentless media attention. In court, the prosecution presented a chilling account of Lily's final moments. They argued that financial stress, emotional instability, and resentment had pushed Rebecca to a breaking point. The evidence: soil on her tires, Lily's backpack hidden in the basement, and the blanket fibers wove a damning narrative. Experts testified that the shallow grave suggested haste and panic rather than a carefully planned act, but the intent to conceal was undeniable. The jury listened in silence as images of the burial site and the belongings recovered from the Harper home were displayed, each detail adding weight to the accusations. The defense attempted to counter, portraying Rebecca as a struggling single mother overwhelmed by circumstances. They argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that someone else could have planted items to frame her, and that grief had caused her to appear inconsistent in interviews. They painted her as fragile, not murderous, insisting that the community's judgment had been clouded by fear. Yet the inconsistencies in her story, paired with the physical evidence, proved impossible to ignore. After days of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. Rebecca Harper was found guilty of murder, her sentence to spend the rest of her life behind prison walls. Gasps filled the courtroom as the judge delivered the ruling. And Maplewood residents, some who had once stood beside her at vigils, now turned away in anger and disbelief. The case became a grim reminder that evil does not always come from outside strangers, but sometimes from within the walls of home. Even after the trial ended, Maplewood carried the scars of the tragedy. The park where Lily was last said to be heading stood empty for months, its swings swaying quietly in the wind. A small memorial of flowers and stuffed animals remained in the town square, a symbol of innocence lost and trust shattered. For many, the haunting truth was impossible to escape. The child the community had searched so desperately to save had been betrayed by the very person meant to protect her.